I have a theory based on my experience as a labor lawyer and a human rights lawyer and as W's lawyer that most of the harm that comes from workplace harassment can be avoided or averted through small, simple acts of kindness. Acts that don't require a great deal of courage or special training or expertise, but that do require the ability to empathize. So before I expand on my theory, I just want to go over some basic definitions with you, some of which we've already covered. This is the dictionary definition I got from dictionary.com of empathy. So when I looked up synonyms for empathize in my thesaurus, it listed sympathize, imagine, understand. I would also add relate. I think empathizing with people involves relating to them. But I would take away sympathize. Sympathy is different than empathy, and you can have one without the other. So empathy involves understanding how somebody feels, and you can feel bad or pity someone without actually understanding their point of view. So like empathy is actually superior to sympathy. I think most people would prefer that you empathize with them and don't want your sympathy. Harassment, engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct that is known or ought reasonably to be known to be unwelcome. And synonyms for harassment include bullying, persecution, pestering, tormenting, bothering, hassling. A single act may constitute a form of harassment, but that's quite rare. Usually when people complain that they're being harassed, they're complaining about a pattern of conduct that's calculated, designed to make them feel unwelcome, stupid, or inferior. They complain about small acts of meanness or spite, because those small acts of meanness can add up to a whole pile of woe that can overwhelm people, driving them out of the workplace and into depression. And this isn't just my own anecdotal observation. This is backed up by academic studies. So researchers have found that victims of workplace harassment have poorer mental health overall, including all of these things on the slide here. So the effects range from low confidence, more missed time, depression, anxiety, PTSD, psychological distress, sleep disorders, greater use of sleep-inducing drugs, sedatives, and other drugs, right? Workplace harassment can have a really huge impacts on people. And as I say, it starts out with small things that people tend to let go because they don't want to make a big deal out of it. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to complain. So they let these little things go, but it still affects them, it adds up, and eventually at some point they snap, and then the people around them don't understand why. Well, if you laughed at that joke last week, like, why are you complaining today? People have their limits. In the studies that focus on the construction industry, they found that construction workers are at even greater risk of developing mental illness. And that's due in part to the prevalence of bullying in the construction industry. Bullying isn't the only reason that construction workers are at greater risk of addiction and mental illness. Of course, other contributing factors are the physical demands of the work that you do, the long hours, the danger, the difficulty, the time away from home. But bullying is definitely a major factor. And many of the studies that talk about mental illness in the construction industry talk about a bullying culture in the construction industry, especially towards apprentices and people who are new to the industry. And the studies note that the industry is dominated by traditional masculine macho beliefs such as self-reliance and stoicism or toughness. And that emphasis on being tough and being self-reliant actually discourages a lot of people from seeking help because it makes them seem not tough, right? These are just some quick stats from the studies that I pulled. 60% of employees in construction reported having been bullied. In Canada, suicide is the second leading cause of death in the construction industry in men aged 25 to 59. with the highest rates in male workers aged between 40 and 59. And 25% of the fentanyl-related deaths in BC involved fully employed construction workers. And currently, I had some discussion with the Power Sector Benefit Trust and inquired about LTD claims. They gave me some stats, and currently mental health conditions account for the largest percentage of LTD claims that the trust is dealing with. So as I say, harassment can often cause people to develop depression and anxiety, and that can reach the point where people need to go off work for that reason, right? One of the studies that I came across while I was researching was an Australian study, which is quite recent. It's from 2021 in the journal Frontiers of Psychiatry. They found that for construction apprentices, workplace bullying was linked to increased substance abuse, poorer mental health, greater risk of suicide, job dissatisfaction, and non-completion of their apprenticeship programs. And they were surprised. They expected first-year apprentices to be worse off, but it turned out it was actually the third-year guys that seemed to get it worse. And the quotes that you see on this slide, these are all from apprentices in Australia who were interviewed as part of the study. I wish I could do an Australian accent, but I can't. So I'll just read some of them to you. One quote, "There's a lot of snarky comments. It's not too bad, but when someone's really harassing you, if he's going off his nut, calling you all these names and stuff, just throwing tools at you and stuff like that, then it gets a bit extreme. But that's what you have to deal with, I guess." Another guy reports at my first post, he actually put a nail gun to my head and threatened to press it, like shoot me in the head with it. This was after 6 weeks of working with this bloke. Just me and him. Yeah, it was brutal. Another guy, there were days I didn't want to go to work because I was stressing about the people that I was going to be working with. That's something else they found in the study, is that the apprentices would get really stressed when they were changing job sites or changing crews, because when they're going to a new crew, they didn't know who they were going to be working with and what they were going to face. So just a few more quotes from the study. So another apprentice, "When one of the tradesmen yells at you for doing something wrong, he does it in front of everyone. That also puts you down, you feel worthless. I know we're apprentices and obviously we're a bit low in the food chain, but some of your good tradies will show you and actually talk to you like a human being. Then you have other ones where you're just getting screamed at. If you're going somewhere for a week, at first you're not going to know who to go to ask questions. You don't know who is going to be nice to you or who is going to call you an idiot and tell you to fuck off, that sort of thing. You get the older tradies who half of them feel like they need to treat you harsher because they were treated like shit when they were apprentices." So I wanted to give you some examples of different behavior that can constitute harassment. Isolating somebody, like shunning someone, excluding them, is one form. Just generally cutting up their work, undermining their confidence is another. Gossip is a big one, and I know there's a lot of gossip in your workplace because I hear it. Nicknames is another, and hazing. So what do I do about it? So I think it's important for people to understand there's a range of different responses. It's not like your only option is take on the bully in front of everybody and call him out. That may be appropriate, you may be able to do that, but if you don't feel up to that, there's lots of other things you could do quietly. Harassment investigations and harassment complaints are really rough to go through, right? That you can get justice by filing a complaint, but for a lot of people, the complaint process itself is re-traumatizing, right? It turns into a huge deal and really escalates quickly, because once you accuse someone publicly, then they really dig in. And what tends to happen is people take sides in the workplace. So, like at a wedding, you got groom side, bride side. Like in a harassment complaint, you have the harasser's side and then the complainant side. And complainants are often kind of shocked. Like once they've spoken up about something, a lot of people that they thought were their friends at work turn against them, right? Because I don't know whether it's a fear that, oh, maybe that person could turn on me too and complain about me. But, so you might think you're one of the guys, and then all of a sudden you realize, no, you're not, right? You don't really have the support that you thought. And it can destroy relationships between other people at work because they're taking different sides of the complaint. So I would never want to discourage someone from complaining about harassment. It's a very personal decision, but I think it's only fair to warn people, right, that it's not an easy process, right? And so if we can nip the harassment in the bud early on, that's what we want to do. So we avoid these contentious, acrimonious investigations and the harm to the individual, like people having to leave the workplace with depression or anxiety. All of that can be avoided, like I say, without a lot of expertise or special training. It's because these are small things that add up. Small responses could potentially cut them off.